Hey guys, if you're shopping for knives and gear, make sure you check out the description of the video you're watching right now for a link to my Amazon store where I've compiled some of the very best items available, including some of my own personal recommendations. Thanks!
What's going on, YouTube? Metal Complex here, and today I've got a really exciting knife review slash knife overview to do with you guys. This is the Spyderco Paysan. I hope I'm pronouncing that correctly. That seems to be the majority pronunciation, but whatever. This knife was generously sent to me along with some others, or at least one other, by my buddy Andrew. And Andrew was really nice. He had a note in there that said, you know, take them apart, do whatever, treat them as your own. And that's always really nice. Obviously, I don't ever expect that, you know, from people who send me knives. And I certainly never beat on people's knives, even if I am going to use them. But this allowed me to, you know, carry this knife and use it on some little teeny tiny things here and there and really get a good perspective on it. This is a knife that personally was very, very attractive to me. And this is probably one of the knives here within the last year that has excited me more than just about anything else that I had. You know, that feeling like you see it and you're like, oh, after you've kind of you've had your hands on a bunch of stuff and you've kind of done the knife thing for a while, and it starts to be further and farther between, you know, times where you see a knife and you're, I want that. This is one of the few knives that really lit me up in the last year or so. And actually, I can't remember when this actually came out, but when I first saw it, I think it was about a year ago, something like that. I've been really excited about it ever since. So I'm very thankful to be finally handling it. Thank you so much to all of the patrons who have been supporting me through this difficult time with, you know, everything that's going on in the world. That surprises me every single day that people still want to do that. But, you know, I can't say it enough. Thank you so much. If you are interested in checking out my Patreon, there's a link down in the description. Anyways, let's go ahead and get an overall measurement of this guy. So the Spyderco Paysan coming in at 8.75 inches overall blade length, coming in at about 3.8 inches overall, and then your cutting edge is about 3.75 on the dot. Because of the way that this knife feels and carries, it feels a little blade heavy, not necessarily in a bad way, but just the compactness and the nature of, you know, the thickness of things, the thickness of the scales, even though the blade is not necessarily a thin blade. It really surprised me that it was that big. It feels like a knife that's only about 8.25 inches overall. It's not until you actually measure it where you're like, oh, geez, boy, that's a big knife. But it's a big knife. How about up against the Ontario Rat 1? You can see there Rat 1 coming in at 8.6 inches overall, so this is a little bit longer. How about up against the Spyderco PM2? Great size comparison. Spyderco PM2 coming in at 8.3 inches overall. I'll give you a sec to kind of take that in, PM2 owners. So you can kind of understand there. The actual handle room, if you're counting the choil, is somewhat similar, but your cutting edge is way longer cutting edge in the Paysan. How about up against the Benchmade Griptilian, or in this case, the Ritter Hogue? Ritter Hogue coming in at 8 inches overall. Scooch back there. And last but not least, the Spyderco Para 3, another good size comparison because it is a Spyderco. Spyderco Para 3 coming in at 7.25 inches overall. How's the action? The action's wonderful. I have messed around with the pivot a little bit just to kind of see exactly how tight I could get it and how smooth that I could get it. Truthfully, I probably could loosen the pivot up a little bit and it would still be perfectly tight and it would still be perfectly center. But I just wanted to see, without cranking on it so hard that I, you know, added some extra teeth to the inside of that pivot. I don't want to do that to somebody else's knife, but I just wanted to test and see exactly how smooth this thing was. And it's got 3 modes. It's got absolute finger guillotine, which is about as loose as some people might be able to stand the pivot. It will get tight, like no wiggle. And it will be so fall shut that it will guillotine your fingers. My wife literally almost cut her fingers on this thing the first time she disengaged it, and she said, I do not like that. This is one of those knives that can be a little too fall shut. My suggestion is, when you get it, as fun as that is, and believe me guys, I get it, right? It's cool to watch the blade go and just fall. It's kind of dangerous when you have a blade this thing is meant to cut, and it is thick and heavy and sharp, right? That's what a guillotine is. It is a thick, heavy blade that is sharp, and it's reliant on gravity to do its dirty work. My suggestion is tighten the pivot just a little bit. I don't know how they come from the factory, but they will break in and become smoother and smoother and smoother. Tighten it up just a little bit. It's still very, very satisfying, but then you don't have a knife that's quite so dangerous, right? This is still, like, this is smoother than like 99% of knives that I handle, and it's not so fall shut that it's dangerous, right? And it's mainly because of like where you got to really make sure your finger's in the right place. It's not a bad deal. This isn't something I faulted for. You just have to make sure your finger's in the right place and then move it out of the way. The way that I've got it right now is to my preference, and I have absolutely no problem with it, but it's a wonderful, wonderful action. These knives are made in Taichung, Taiwan, and I know how some of you guys feel about knives that are not made in the United States. I used to be there. I used to be at the point where I was like, I cannot stand anything but USA on my blades. And while I'll admit, I still, seeing Taiwan on anything still, like I have that internal like, ooh, make an X with my fingers and cringe away from it. I understand now after handling so many Taichung Taiwan Spydercos, it's like, they might actually have better quality than the US Spydercos. In fact, there's more than enough evidence of that. Taichung Taiwan Spydercos are absolutely the highest quality Spydercos in terms of fit and finish and just overall execution that there is. I still love my US Spydercos, and I still have that bias. I like to see USA on the blade, but yeah, that's something that's where they're made, right? And that's part of the additional price tag. If that sways you, okay, that's fine. But this is one of those knives where it wouldn't bother me because of what it is. And we're going to get more into that. But anyways, yeah, action's great. Let's go ahead and do a hardware check before I forget. And yeah, we will weigh it. I know sometimes I forget that too. So the pivot is actually a pretty big size. We're going to jump up to T10. Handy dandy Wea bit selector and Wea magnetic driver. Two items that are very inexpensive and very recommendable. You can find them down in the Amazon store that I reference at the beginning of each and every video. Just pull it up and look for the section that says knife maintenance. Yeah, the pivot's a T10. And there's nothing else. Except for the other side of the pivot, you got pocket clip screws. So the pocket clip screws are T6. Look, most of the time I really come down on T6, but here's the thing. This isn't integral or integral, however you want to say it. That being the case, it is one solid piece of titanium. I could have brought this up at the beginning, but I feel like everybody knows this. They have to mill a block of titanium perfectly. First try. To accept all of the hardware perfectly and the blade and, everything, non-moving and moving parts alike. It has to be perfect or they got to start over. That's a huge part of the price tag. That is a huge part. But Tucson can do it for blah, 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 less money. I know. But, Tucson and Spyderco Taichung Taiwan, whether you agree with me or not, it's perfectly okay. Everybody has their own opinions. I've handled a lot of Tucsons. I've handled a lot of Spydercos. They are not in the same league. Not even close. This has so many extra polishes and so many extra little details that make it, in my opinion, not necessarily an overwhelmingly better cutting tool than some of those other brands, but just an object that clearly more love and care and personal touch has gone into. Whether or not the price is justified, different argument, right? But in terms of, is this a knife that is worth more money? Yes. So you've got that alongside the fact that it is an integral, adding to the price. But anyways, the reason I'm going to give it a pass on the T6 hardware is because the only other hardware on the knife is the pivot. That's it. If you want to take the blade out, you don't have to mess with any of this stuff. You just take there's no reason to do this unless you bend the clip. You just take the pivot out and pull the blade out. That's the beauty of an integral. Everybody knows this. It makes it, in some ways, a little bit more durable, but substantially easier to do maintenance on or clean or whatever. That's just awesome. So I love that. I have no issues with that whatsoever. Let's go ahead and weigh it. This is a solid piece of, it's a solid piece of titanium. It's a one piece of titanium, but where is my dadgum flashlight? There it is, clear over here. Always losing that thing. I'm going to put a bell on that thing. Not that that would help, I guess, because it's not moving. But anyways, it's a solid piece of titanium. Lots of my own pocket lint in there. Sorry, guys. But Yeah, not super thick titanium, but not milled or anything like that. And then we also have a blade that is thicker than you might expect for a Spyderco. Let me go ahead and give you guys an example of that here real quick. About 160 thousandths. That's roughly Hinderer XM18 thick. And it's also a pretty large knife all the way around. It's still not a massively heavy knife. Comes in at a pretty surprising 4.34 ounces. I never weigh these things until I'm doing it on camera because I like to guess. This was my honest guess. I was guessing 5.2 ounces. Now that can be good or bad, right? Perceived weight could technically be worse than actual weight if it makes you notice it in the pocket, right? That's the whole reason we weigh anything, is to give an idea, but it's actually perceived weight. It's how it's going to affect the individual while you're carrying it. So is it a heavy knife? No. Did I notice it in the pocket? Not really. Initially, I felt like I did, but I think it's just because it's a little bit of a longer knife. In any case, it's a knife that I definitely would carry. I regularly carry knives between 4.5 and 6.5 ounces, and this was very welcome in the pocket. In fact, overall carry profile is really good, even though it is a Spyderco with that Spyderco hole. We'll put it up against the Spyderco PM2 and Para 3, and you can see there it's basically as long overall in body as the PM2, maybe a hair longer, but it's nowhere near as tall. So the only difference really is the weight. It's a little bit heavier, but it's honestly a little bit easier overall room in the pocket that it takes up. It's a little easier to carry than either of these guys. So that's good. How's the actual deployment? We didn't talk about that. Wonderful. The access to the thumb hole is fantastic. I can easily do all of the little Spyderco things that everybody likes to do. It's great. But what about the D10? I heard it was super light. It is. Let's talk about the D10. The D10's lighter than you would expect on a knife like this. I wouldn't say that it's bothersome. Right when I opened it, I made this comment. I was like, everybody said the D10's like super light. It doesn't seem that light. So it's a little mushy, right? So let me give you an example. Right here. It's kind of a mush. The D10's there, right? But can you hold on to it and shake it out? Yeah, you can. That's stupid. And here's why that's stupid. The only time that something like that, now I'm about to drive this point home because I know there's a lot of people with fire at your fingertips and you're ready to type up this big long thing for me, right? If you're wearing athletic shorts and you've got this thing clipped clear to the front, like of your pocket to where the blade's not pinned up against the back seam, and you're about to do a 100-yard dash with this knife in your pocket, it's a problem. Don't do that because the blade will come out, right? Now, if you're anybody else just walking with a knife in your pocket, not climbing buildings, not jumping off of buildings, not jumping on a trampoline, right? And not running a 100-yard dash, and what, okay, fair enough. If you are military, law enforcement, you have a knife in your pocket and you're running, okay, all right. Most of the time, the knife is going to be carried up against the back seam of your pocket, right? So the pocket clip, despite me not feeling too great about the pocket clip in terms of the design, the pocket clip is going to do a good job for the most part of keeping the knife in your pants. This whole, thing, here's the, let me drive this home. That's why that's dumb. This is my Hinderer XM18. This knife has the heaviest detent of any knife that I own, and it has one of the heaviest detents. Let me show you. One of the heaviest detents that I have ever felt, right? I can do that with this knife too. Stop using that test. It is stupid. And anybody who blows that up, I see that all the time. You can shake the knife. I'm sorry, it's just, yeah, it takes a little more force to do this, right? It takes more force to do that than it does with this one, right? But the difference, even though this is a softer detent, this is a heavier detent, right? We're talking about the scenario in which a person would be running and not quite running hard enough with the position of this knife in their pants to get that one to deploy, but running just hard enough to get this one to deploy. It's such a marginal stupid. It's stupid. I'm so done with that. It's dumb. I can shake open any titanium frame lock. I don't care what it is. I can shake all of them open. I'm done with that argument. Okay, anyways, let's talk about the knife. Got out of breath talking about that. So anyways, this knife, now, if you are not a fan of sheep's foot blades or you're not a fan of Spyderco knives and their aesthetics in general, this may not be for you. I'll admit that I have always thought the Spyderco knives, specifically the PM2, that they're ugly knives, that they all look like wounded birds laying on the side of the road. This knife, this is a Peter Resenti design. Oh, God, I'm going to feel dumb if I'm wrong about that. I'm 99% sure I'm right about that. There's a lot of knife information rattling around in my head. This design, to me, is beautiful. And I believe that Peter Resenti designs are some of the most beautiful and aesthetically pleasing knives on the planet. I like a generally simplistic look. And I've come around recently to the joy, not just in terms of utility, but also aesthetics of a sheep's foot blade. This knife has the perfect combination of body to blade and finishes, contrasts between body and blade. It's just excellent. This is so beautiful. I'm going to show you guys what first off, this is the best tumbling that exists on the planet. Spyderco Taichung Taiwan's tumbled blades are the most beautiful tumbled blades that are out there. The Hinder XM18 has a nice like if I turn it this way, you can see it's that semi-reflective, right? Same thing with this guy, a little more reflective than some of your tumbled blades. But the scratch pattern on the XM18 is a little more scratchy. They're more lines than grains. In this guy, they're grains, and that's nice to me. Whether they show more or less scratches, whatever. You know, I don't know. It's probably going to be about the same, maybe a little bit more. You might be able to see a little more on that, but it just, oh, the plain even tumbling on these things is just amazing. And then we have a little darker, more of a concrete, or I mean, since we're talking about Hinder knives, kind of a working finish on this, but it's smooth. It's not grippy or anything like that. It's nice and smooth, and that's just really nice all the way around, except for the pocket clip. This isn't a standard color, by the way. It was done by the owner. I'm indifferent about the anodizing job or the heat treatment job. It's more so the clip itself. We'll talk about that. But yeah, it's wonderful. And speaking of that, you know, these edges have all been nicely knocked down. Part of it's due to the tumbling, but it also looks like extra process is done to it. The inside of the spider hole, beautiful. I mean, truthfully, because of that, this knife is so, you know, easy to sort of manipulate and play with. There's a couple of little sharp spots, but just, I mean, for people who are going to sit around on their couch and fidget with it, nah, this isn't going to bother you. It's more so in terms of use that you're going to notice some of those spots. But again, we're going to talk about that. So what's the steel on this guy? I don't know why I just put it away. It's S90V. S90V is stainless, and it is one of the most edge retentive steels out there. It is a powder steel. The only steels that I know of that are readily available in pocket knives that have better edge retention are, and now it depends on the heat treat, but by charts, S110V, Maximate, and is there another one? I mean, yeah, I know S125 and you know, Rex 121, but I think just Maximate and S110 are going to beat it in edge retention. This is a little bit, if I'm not mistaken, I think it's about the same corrosion resistance. It's a little bit tougher than S110. Now, that's not saying very much. S90V is not tough. This is not a steel that you can expect to roll rather than chipping. It's much more like, now it depends on final edge geometry, but you know, if we had another Paysan and it was made out of, you know, M4 or 3V, much tougher steels, well, those would likely roll before they chipped. You know, with the same use, S90V is going to chip before it rolls. And it is not easy to sharpen. I've tried to sharpen S90V before. It sucks. Some people can do it. I'm not very good at it, or at least I don't have the patience. Yeah, S90V is not a fun steel to sharpen. But if you're not, you know, trying to pound this into another piece of metal or some hard object with a tamping hammer and constantly chewing the edge up, then you may not have to worry about it as often. S90V in any case is a very premium steel, and I think it's appropriate for a knife of this caliber. My favorite thing about the blade is the blade shape. We have a flat that carries about 90% the length of the blade, carrying a massive amount of thickness out here. So what the knife lacks in, you know, steel composition in terms of like toughness and durability, it's substantially, a lot of it's made up in the geometry of the blade. So that's great. It does not get super thin behind the edge, but again, if you're going to go out and use a knife that's made out of S90V, a steel that's emphasizing edge retention, right? It may not have the ultimate cutting performance, but it is backed up a little bit in terms of durability by the geometry of the final cutting edge. Does it cut? Yeah, you bet it cuts. There's nothing in the cutting path. Will it shave a grape? Probably not. Why are you shaving grapes, right? Or toilet paper or whatever, right? So food prep camp knife, I mean, it's going to do it. It's not going to do it as good as an Opinel, right? But if you want an Opinel, buy an Opinel. So that's kind of what I'm saying there. I mean, I think it's designed to be a knife that utilizes S90V, which, you know, edge retention, but the geometry is one of a knife that's meant to be used a little bit harder than your standard S90V knife. So I appreciate that, and I kind of understand where they went. I probably would have preferred a different blade steel. What? I don't know. But I don't know that S90V is what I would have chosen, but I can completely understand it, and I think it's a fine steel for the knife. Also just the amount of cutting edge on the thing is awesome. That's really, really great. Let's talk about the handle here. I love how it looks. We've got flat up here, and these scoops are sort of carved out, the chamfering. All the edges are nicely rounded down. The sharp spots that I'm talking about are right here. These are like teeth. Oh, they're pointy. I mean, it's not often I'm going to be up here like digging that in, but if I did, you know, yeah, I'd feel it a little bit. Some of these internal edges right here could have been knocked down just a little bit. You can see there, it gets kind of sharp right there. I'm catching with a little bit, not that big of a deal. There's plenty of access to the lock bar itself, and the lock bar is not uncomfortable. That's most of the time where I'm going to be moving my fingers into, so it's not that big of a deal. Again, inside here, this all could have been knocked down just a little bit. Not that big of a deal. Back here, yeah, same kind of thing. Not really a problem, just a little bit of a thing to notice. You can see right there, that's the actual stop pin. No shouldering, but not that big of a deal. The knife is centered. You can see there, right there, we're looking at good centering. Back here, I love how this looks. We have the this area right here that's textured. I don't know how often you're going to be holding it upside down, but it's there if you need it. The lanyard hole is there, and it's not necessarily being prioritized, but it's in kind of a weird spot. I feel like if you ran a lanyard through there, it might catch the tip. Maybe not. It's not that bad, but it might catch the tip a little bit, and you might lose the lanyard. I don't know. I'd rather it just wasn't there. It's not in the way, but I'd rather it just wasn't there. The pocket clip is a classic Spyderco pocket clip. The knife doesn't carry shallow or deep. It just carries kind of right in the middle. There's nothing wrong with the Spyderco pocket clip, but on a knife like this, I kind of wanted to, I think I'm saying the same thing. I'm saying a lot of the same stuff that most reviewers say, but I agree with them. The pocket clip should have been something else. Why do we have a standard Spyderco clip on this thing? This is a really expensive knife. Let's have like a themed pocket clip for this thing. It's begging for a themed clip. This looks so weird. I mean, honestly, if I was going to spend this much money on the knife, I would go ahead and just buy a different clip for it. I'd be like, what's another, 30, 40 bucks for a really nice sculpted titanium clip that kind of goes along with the knife? You can get them. They're out there. This is a standard 3-hole Spyderco clip. There's a billion aftermarket clips made for this thing. You can find them. You get one in titanium that goes along with the knife, or one that just fits your carry preferences, whatever. That clip does not belong on this knife. We do have a steel lock bar insert. That's what I would expect. You can see there we are locking up at something like 40%. There's a slight hint of lock stick, but that always goes away over time, and it's not enough for me to make a big deal out of it. Lock stick sometimes is a thing on knives, as long as you're not having to pry it. As long as you can, conveniently disengage it with your thumb, you're not having to use a penny or a screwdriver to unlock it, you don't have a problem. There's no reason to worry about it. There's no reason to send it back. Lock stick is fine. It means it's locking up solid. It's not something that you should be concerned with. So again, what are my issues with this knife? This knife has a slightly weak detent. It can be shaken out, but every knife can be shaken out. I would like it to have a more of a clicky detent, more of a snap, right? That's what I associate with a nice knife, is a click, a snap. I like that. The edges right here, a little teeny tiny bit sharp. I don't know if S90V would have been my steel of choice. It's completely fine. Yeah, it's got some T6 screws, but it's not that big of a deal. The pocket clip makes no sense. Why didn't they have a better pocket clip? Other than that, the biggest problem with this guy for most, it's not necessarily a problem, it's one that, is just going to turn a lot of people away, is the price. These are not widely available, though I just looked and I do actually have a link for this guy down in my Amazon store. You can pick this up. But, also checking on sites like Blade HQ and all the main retail sites where these things were available when they were widely available, They were being sold on sites like that for $560. That is a lot of money. This is a non-US knife. However, Taiwan manufacturing is premium, and it's generally not like just specific to Spyderco knives, I'm finding out. Taiwan is known for premium manufacturing, not necessarily across the board, but neither is America. Not everything that comes out of the USA is absolutely premium. We have our, we're known for more so high-end stuff, but we also manufacture some garbage. But yeah, Taiwan, for the most part, is known for really high-end manufacturing. So you have that alongside this being a Peter Rosenti design. It is an integral, and it is absolutely using premium materials, and they are executed in a way that is, for the most part, really, really good. The two things that would need to be changed to get me to purchase this knife, I mean, I could probably deal with these corners. I would really like these corners to be knocked down. I would really, really like those corners to be knocked down. And then the detent. A little bit heavier and a little bit clickier. I'm not worried about the knife flying out. It's that feeling. It's not pleasing to feel a detent be mushy or soft. I want it to click, right? That's just an internal thing. I can't tell you that why I want that and why I'm placing a specific value on that has anything to do necessarily with utility or convenience or safety. That's what I want, right? I'm paying a lot of money for this. I want it to feel like I've been led to assume a $560 knife feels. I've handled a lot of knives that are in that price range, and they all click. That's what I like. That's what I want. So you can side with me on that or not. It's perfectly fine. That's honestly how I feel. But truthfully, this knife is very well executed. There's a couple of things that I think just need to be a little teeny tiny bit better, and they would have had an absolute grand slam. I do still really like this knife. So this is I don't do this very often, but I'm going to do it. This isn't a knife that I can honestly recommend to people. It's the combination of just a couple teeny tiny flaws and the fact that it's super expensive, right? But if you're like, complex, I can overlook that stuff. I've got the money and I still want it. Am I going to be happy with it? Yeah, you're probably still going to be happy with it, especially if you're used to spending knives or spending money in this price range anyway. So I'm not going to recommend it, but I can't deny that it's still definitely one of my favorite knives ever. I mean, this is super cool. The look of it and the fact that it's an integral, and honestly, the fidget factor, right? If you regularly spend money on knives like this, that look like this, that have a good fidget factor, and that's kind of what you like, and you're more of an enthusiast and just kind of a light carry, light use kind of person, you just really like, you're just a knife enthusiast kind of, you'll like it for that reason alone. It's fun to play with, it's easy to engage, and I love it. So this is going to go on my favorite knives of all time playlist, but not my most recommended, which is weird and almost contradictory, but that's the truth. So anyways, Andrew, thank you so much for sending this to me. I think that's all that I can say about this knife. If you guys enjoyed this review or you're at least entertained by it, please leave a like. If you'd like to check out my other content, I do, of course, have lots of videos of knives that are either expensive or inexpensive that I do or don't like.